right? So let's begin with this question. And the question is, all your three documentaries have been documentaries more or less about conversations, right? They were, of course, documentaries about borders, people, right? And then the train journey, the voyage you took, and then also about fireflies, which was Kasbah. But what served as a bedrock of all these conversations was conversations with people primarily. And when I see this, I saw your WhatsApp status yesterday, and you posted a auto driver thing while where he was saying something to you, or where he might have recited something to you, and you quoted him with a photo, right? So the question is, does this love for filmmaking purely comes out of the love for having conversations with people? Because I can tell that you're fond of having conversations, right? So am I fair assessing this?
So I think partly yes. I think love for filmmaking majorly started with just wanting to be independent, wanting to do something which allows me to be in a more informal, non-hierarchical kind of a setup. But as soon as I started making films, I would say uh, initially conversations were important because when you have very less time to shoot a documentary, you can't make an observational documentary, right? Because documentaries are also many of many types. So when we were shooting Kazwa, we had 3 days, and if you have to make a documentary in 3 days, you'll have to do interviews. But I think with the process, especially Unreserved, the process with Unreserved taught me that I'm actually really fond of conversation. And I just really like when people are able to share something which is deeply personal to them with me. I love feeling, I get goosebumps when people share something deeply personal and it moves me. I think that feeling is very addictive. And I also feel I learned something and I get to feel, I think the kind of upbringing education I had, generally it was very technical, or I would say sterile or detached. And uh, I mean, the whole engineering training also makes you a little detached from your emotions because you have to clear the exams and get good marks. And in that whole process, you stop caring about people. You stop caring about your own emotions because life is all about sacrifice and clearing this exam and getting a great job. It's not about generally feeling happy, satisfied, or be at peace, or be in sync with your emotions. And certain emotions are bad, right? uh, Feeling sad is bad, crying is totally out of question. So those are things you're taught as part of this training. So I think the more I talk to people, I think it helped me unlearn a lot of these foundational screw ups in my emotional upbringing. So I think that way I realized, okay, I love talking. And in fact, now I'm making a fiction film, so there are no conversations involved in that process, as in on-camera conversations. But there's a lot of talking with the crew members, and then it's just like, this whole auto interaction or anything is, it's sort of frivolous, but it just keeps me in sync with reality. It's very easy to be a privileged person who does not care, and I can be very happy with my 10 friends who visit me. We all chill together, we drink together, we watch something, we talk about art. But I think the idea is also to remain open to reality, that there's a bigger reality out there. So in that sense, conversations are really helpful. So it's more a, I feel it's become more of a way of life, and gone beyond films. And some of it seeps into the films also. Yeah.
And then how do you avoid correcting people then? For example, you're talking to this person, this auto driver, right? And then he says something like, "Oh, I went back and I killed someone." And then is there not an inherent desire to say, "Oh, this is wrong, but you cannot do this"? How would you just sit through and listen to the entire thing?
I mean, he didn't kill him, he just beat him up. He just beat him up.
My bad.
He didn't kill. And
Right, right, right. My bad. And
yeah,
then he went to
I
jail for 6, 7 months.
he went to jail because he like badly beat him up. And then I mean, generally I don't feel like correcting people, because what is the point of correcting them? Because uh, I can come across as a self-righteous person, but then I will not understand their story. I think many times my intention of going into a conversation is understanding someone's story, and they should be able to articulate it in their form of truth, right? And for example, he said very interesting things about caste and religion also, because I was curious. So I was asking him about the caste situation in his village, and he said how times have changed. That initially the Dalits in his village were not allowed to come to restaurants, and then slowly they were able to come to a certain portion of the restaurant, and today they can sit at any seat in the restaurant, but they have to still clean their utensils on their own. If the restaurant is run by a Brahmin or a Kshatriya or a Vash, they will not clean the utensils used by Dalit customers. And but then, I mean, he said it in a way which was like कि देखो time कितना बदल गया है, कि पहले वो रेस्टोरेंट नहीं आ सकते थे, अब उनको सिर्फ बर्तन साफ करने पड़ते हैं. Now I can also get triggered by this comment, because I am like because casteism तो exist करता है, or I can just try and see it from his point of view. So I think I'm usually inclined to see things from their point of view. It's also with films, I think I have realized that more than correcting, I have editorial control. Like, when I was suggesting that, it's a recording, you can edit it a certain way. So films allow you that privilege, right? If even if you say something deeply problematic, it's my choice to keep it in the film or not, and that's what matters to me. I have editorial control. Why should I exercise my editorial control right now and censor you? I mean, I'm curious about your story. So if I start censoring you, you will not open up to me or tell me anything. So I don't feel. Sometimes I get triggered, but I think it's more of sitting with that trigger. Ki, it's important to hear them out. Yeah.
About the editorial control, did you also edit a few stories or stories which did not make to the final cut of Borderland? Were there stories that you were like, oh, this is good, but I cannot put it out there for people to watch?
We shot 19 stories actually across different borders. Out of the 19 stories, we have 6 in the film. So yeah, fair amount of footage which did not make it to the cut. We
And
actually
and
shot like
and what was
120
the
cuts.
criteria of these? What was the
So
criteria that you decided that oh, this could make to the cut and this could not make to the cut? What was that?
right. So I think one basic thing is that many times we talk to people and people don't open up, right? Like you said, a lot of the foundation of these stories is the interviews we did with people. So even in Borderlands, we talked to about 120 people, and not everyone opened up. And even when people open up, not everyone is articulate enough or has a compelling story. So I think that is the most basic filter. You listen to everything and you see who told their story in a compelling way. And sometimes people tell it in a compelling way, but we do some sort of shoddy job with shooting and we are unable to capture it. So what are those stories where we didn't fuck up, they didn't fuck up, and it looks good, and then it boils down to just understanding that two stories should not say the same thing. There are sometimes stories which almost say the same thing and you feel like कि इन दोनों में से एक ही रखनी चाहिए. और बाकी कुछ स्टोरीज तो इनकम्प्लीट थी, कहीं से हमें निकाल दिया. We are in a sort of a controversial area when the intelligence bureaus found out about our presence in that area and they asked us to leave. We were shooting in Nepal at some place where they did not like Indian journalists because some Indian journalists had come and portrayed this whole village as a village of smugglers. तो वहां से उन्होंने निकाल दिया. तो ऐसे करते करते आप 20 चीजें ट्राई करते हो, उसमें से आप जो फाइनली देखते हो तो इतनी कुछ चीजें ही काम करती हैं. तो आई थिंक we had 6 or 7 stories on the final edit which were working, and we had 7 basically, and one we were not able to, like, we tried very hard to make it work but we couldn't keep it. So it's basically finding the best of what you have and the most universal of what you have. And we didn't set out with certain durations like Unreserved and Borderlands. When we were making it, we didn't know how long these films will be. So it's basically the best that we have. इतना है. वो there's an अंदाज अपना अपना डायलॉग ना, जितना था लेके आया हूँ. है ना, जितना था सरकार उतना लेके आया हूँ। तो वो फिल्में ऐसे एडिट हुई हैं कि दिस इज द बेस्ट वी हैव, दिस इज द बेस्ट वर्थ शेयरिंग, सो लेट्स make it, let's make the best film that we can out
So
of
more
it.
or less, so more or less, the films were made at the editing table. One could say so, right?
The I would say the final narrative was churned out on the edit table. Of course, it was
Right.
shot with a certain perspective, and the perspective was stronger in Borderlands because we had to choose the places very specifically in the shoot, right? Because Unreserved is more exploratory in the sense हम ट्रेन पे चढ़ गए हैं, लोगों से बातें करते हैं, उसमें एक्सप्लोरेशन बहुत ज्यादा है, आई वुड से टू द डिग्री ऑफ मेकिंग अनरिजर्व्ड मेड मोर ऑन द एडिट. uh, and there in the shoot the perspective is that we will listen to people, it will be people's stories, and it will be not general conversation on weather, politics, it will be personal stories. That's a decision that has been made on the shoot. On the edit is where we are figuring the structure of the film. And Borderlands is more thought out in the sense ki very specifically we've gone to certain places. We will go to the shelter home and capture stories of rescued girls. We will go to this basti of Pakistani Hindus and capture a story. These are decisions that have been made on the shoot, and in the edit we are figuring out what are the stories which we've captured nicely, and how will they sit together. So again, the structuring is being done on the edit, but a lot of the stories have already been shot with a very specific lens. So thoda difference hai, I would say. Um, so I would say, I mean, Unreserved for sure. So much more writing has happened on the edit compared to Borderlands. Yeah, and that's where Anadi comes in. My the person I've worked with, like he's been my editor, and he's also been a film school in many ways. I've learned a lot from him. Very patient person. Luckily, I have had the privilege of working with two very good editors in my life, and somehow they're the most patient people. And you realize that editors play the role of either a co-director or a co-writer in documentaries. So that's a fact. Yeah.
And about the unreserved part, you said it was more of an exploratory voyage that you took. And it is an exploration. You went inside the general dabbas of a train, right, pan India, and you were traveling. Why did you choose the general dabbas and why not the AC ones? Why was that the
So
choice?
so there is a practical problem, and then we turned it into a philosophical solution. The practical problem was that we were finding it very difficult to get permissions. So we had initially tried to approach it as a film about all classes, and we realized that permission milna bahut mushkil hai. It's also very expensive. So very early in the process, I think we had this hunch that if we restrict ourselves to general dabbas, no one will come and check. That we've realized we can't afford the permissions, and mostly we'll not even get them. And if we just stay in general dabbas, no one will come, which was true. No one ever came. We shot for 17 days non-stop, and no one came. Uh, but then what happened was, as soon as we realized this, we also sort of started developing a gaze. And we read Gandhi's essay on I think third class in Indian railways. It's a 3-page essay he wrote in 1917, and that was a very good foundational text in terms of his gaze and why we need to talk about general dabba, how it represents majority of the country. And I think from that point onwards, the film sort of got a class consciousness, or a gaze which was about exploring certain kind of stories, which belong to a certain class milieu, right? So I think that's what happened. I think it was a very practical choice initially, and we were just happy that we were pushed into making that choice almost. It just made the whole thing more meaningful.
And why was there a problem with the permission thing? Why did you not get the permission for shooting?
So, I mean, one is that the government is usually very doubtful about documentary filmmakers. There's a film called India's Daughter, where which came out, and I think it was a very, I think a British filmmaker interviewed a rapist in the jail, and it became an international blot on India's image. Sort of, the film got banned in India. So after that film, it's usually very difficult for filmmakers to get full editorial control on their shoot. Like, even if you get a permission, the government will attach a person to your shooting crew. uh, that is one problem. Second is purely money. I feel if you start throwing money at people, you will obviously get permissions, and we were told that if we pay about 1 lakh per day plus 5 lakhs of security, which is about 22 lakh rupees, then we would get the permissions. But I mean, we didn't have that kind of capital. So I think there were these two complexities. We were finding it difficult to get through to the right authorities, and whoever we were meeting, they were sort of telling us a process which is usually for Bollywood. We were like, we are not a Bollywood film. If tomorrow Karan Johar is shooting in the trains, he will not care about 22 lakhs. But I mean, we are independent filmmakers. We're just starting out. Our entire budget for the film was 3 lakh rupees. So then how do you make a 3 lakh rupee film with 22 lakh rupees spent in permissions? It's impossible, right? So you have to then figure jugards.
So about Borderlands, right? You said there are a few states who presume or presuppose this geographical identity they have, right? And they are very sure about these things. And you were living in such states. For example, you were born and brought up in Punjab, right? I mean, it's controversial, but in a more presumed way, Punjab also has that sense, right? If we remove it from some part of it, in more or less way, at least that sense of being Indian uh, is more concrete in regions of Punjab than in regions of Manipur or Kashmir or, for example, some parts of Bengal, right? And then you kept moving from here and there uh, across the country. My question is, how did it change your narrative, your pan-India narrative about nationalism itself, right? And then meeting people with a sub-national identity as well. Then meeting a guy maybe on a train who says, "Oh, I favor Pakistan more than I favor this country," right? How did it help you understand the divisions better, or did you grow bitter towards it? How was that?
So I think it definitely made me understand the that nationalism or national identity is not black and white. So I think the way our media portrays and the way our parents teach us, the way our schools teach us, we somehow don't see. Uh, I mean, our sense of nationalism is very monolithic. That obviously, I love my country. India is the best, and you're always obviously very grateful, because I feel I do have a sense of patriotism. I feel being born in India gives me a lot of privilege in a way. I live in this continent where I can move around and also have such crazy food without any problem. Like, I can have this great ghee pori dosa, and I can have this bamboo shoot pork curry from Nagaland, and meet all these great people, right? I think there's a lot to respect, but our education never teaches us to question this feeling, especially when this feeling is used to politically mobilize people or induce hate for other countries. We have neighbors, and some of those neighbors, we have very difficult relationships. So the way we grow up is, everyone who likes Pakistan is bad, everyone who questions India is bad, right? So all of a sudden, I'm meeting people who have more complex ideas, and the place that they come from, you also sort of understand where they are coming from. They have reasons to feel the way they feel. And Punjab itself has had a very complicated history with the idea of nationalism. There was a huge Khalistan movement through 80s and early 90s. So I know that on some level I am able to understand it because of my own state's history. But I think it definitely complicated my idea of this black and white nationalism, that you are either a patriot or an anti-national. All of a sudden, people are people, and they have this whole, it's nationalism is also like the queer spectrum. There is a spectrum of nationalism. There are people like my mother, or there is a character called Noor who says something very beautiful. She says that, can any other country be more beautiful than your own? I was like, this, I can't hear you. Huh?
I was thinking about this when you were talking about this idea of nationalism, because this is what she says when she's at the girl rescue child center, right? And this is where she talks to someone and she says the same thing. How can I find some other country more beautiful than my country, right?
I
So
still get goosebumps. I get goosebumps thinking that, I'm getting goosebumps right now. Because I'm like, that really captures the emotion that nationalism induces. But then, for a person like Surjo Kanta or for the Kashmiri in Unreserved, their sense of belonging to their state is in conflict sometimes with their belonging to the country. And then how do you respond to that? It's much more complicated. So I think traveling through all these regions, uh, especially in Borderlands, I feel there's a whole spectrum. You have my mother, who's extremely patriotic. You have Surjo Kanta, who's making films about revolutionaries in Manipur. You have Deepa, who was born in Pakistan and she has fond feelings for Pakistan. She remembers Pakistan with a lot of fondness, but now she's in the process of becoming Indian, right? You
And
have Dhali.
you could also tell. I'm sorry to cut you off, but you could also tell in Deepa's story where she sits here and she says, "वहाँ पे तो बाहर जाना भी allowed नहीं होता है. Here I could go wherever I want, right?" And that sense of privilege, you could see it here in Deepa's story, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That she's allowed to move as much she wants and wherever she wants, right? Which she could not feel while she was across the border.
right,
Across the border would not be the right terminology to use here, but in the same land somewhere, extended
right,
land,
right, right,
whatever
right.
that
In fact,
means.
Noor also says that in India, being homosexual is legal. That she
Yes,
can be in love with a girl here, while saying that there is no other country more beautiful than her own. So you see, there's a
yes,
conflict in terms of where she feels she belongs and where she feels more free. It's not always in sync, and which is why our relationships to our families are also very tricky, because our families many times feel like they control us. Our parents, our relatives, all these values, they control us. We want to be free, but we also have a lot of emotions towards our family and parents. So these are not logical things, right? I don't think there's a very clear cut logic there. But I was also pointing out how Dolly was born in Bangladesh but is now Indian. So there is this whole sense of spectrum which I think I got exposed to, which really, really helped understand what is nationalism, how it operates in people's emotions. Yeah.
then there is also your mother, right, who says this thing at the very end, when her bit is about to be closed, and she says, I wished I could have done something for my country, right, and I wanted to, and no matter how old I get, but when I think about my country, or for example when she visited Wagah border, right, she had that energy, that zeal, that jest, right, and she talks about it in the film as well. So, yes, by the way, do you call and answer your mother more often than usual? Like, has it changed after Borderland?
It changed for a few years. I have a feeling we're back to almost square one. But I feel it's better for sure. It's better for sure, but it became very good. Right? I think in the aftermath of the film coming out, and you're talking about it every day, reflecting about it every day. I think I was talking to my mother more often, texting her more often. I still think it's better, but it's better than I think what it was before we shot. But it's not the best. I feel. I think it's still become a little sporadic. कि,
Right.
you
कभी
know,
कभी हो जाता है
कभी
वो,
कभी होता
ठीक
है,
है.
हाँ. But I mean, there's
हाँ.
much more warmth and much more openness in our relationship for sure. Like, we got to understand each other as adults through this process. Like,
Right.
you have a certain image of your parents, your father, mother, but I think this process allows you to take a step back and also see them as a person. And I thought that was very interesting to just see her life story, and not from the point of view of a son necessarily, but as someone who's just talking to her. And especially when we were editing, I think it hits you more because you're watching it with a stranger. Now a stranger is hearing your mother's story, and how do they react, how do other people react? It's just very interesting. Yeah.
That never was a part of the plan, right? You going out and hearing other people's story, but being at your home and listening to your parents' stories, that was not the part of the plan, right? Then how did it come
No.
to be?
Um, I think one important thing was during we were doing a crowdfunding campaign for the film, and during that
Right.
campaign, I was shooting at home because we had like it's contradictory, right? I have to shoot a pitch video to raise funds. I don't have money to shoot my pitch video, so basically we were shooting around our home, and I was staying at my home. So I thought I'll talk to my mother also because her my maternal side has a partition history. So,
Hmm.
and when I talked to my mother, it was very interesting because she said that she's never seen the border. And I was amazed, ki, she's 50 years old and she's always been in a border area and she's never seen the border. So there was a thought that, what if my film became an excuse to take her to the border? But I think I also, frankly, when I started shooting, I was feeling so lost. And the first stretch that we shot was from Gujarat to Punjab. That was the plan, that we will start with the India Pakistan border. And we had just finished shooting with Deepa in Jodhpur, and it was emotionally excruciating because the process was more difficult than I thought at that point. I think I was overthinking also, and I was feeling very less. I was very scared that I'm not feeling enough. Uh, you want to feel more in the process, but there was a certain dissonance in the mind and body. I know I have to make a film, but somehow emotions उतने मैं नहीं feel कर पा रहा हूँ जितना मैं करना चाहता हूँ. So I think
And
going
why
to
was
home,
that?
because you've thought about the film so much and you've built a campaign, you've raised the money, and so till a certain point, the film is an emotion in your head. Now you have very logically broken it down into a pitch, and then you have pitched it very confidently 200 times, and now you're actually getting to make it. Now you've spent so much time with the idea of making the film that there is a meta relationship to the film now. It's not the primary relationship. It's like when you fall in love, but 1 year later you can only recall that feeling of falling in love many times. So it was like that, and I think going to the home became a way to come back in sync with my emotions also, in a way. I mean, at that point I think I was just feeling so lost. I was like, घर पे shoot तो करना ही है, अभी कर लेता हूँ, because I'm just feeling so off. So it will be comforting in a way to be at home, but film का काम भी नहीं रुकेगा. So it was something like that. I feel I was excited by the idea because I was like, I'll get to chill at home, talk to my mother. साथ में film भी बन जाएगी. So it was a win-win. I feel in that case, emotionally.
Does it also happen with the retelling of the same things again and again? Because I mean, people do interviews after they have made the films, right?
Yeah.
And more or less, they say the same things because that is the only true thing, right? And how often would you reiterate the truth again and again? Because after a point it becomes monotonous. So does it happen with you, where you're like, oh, I've said this all the time and I'm saying it again. I have to reiterate the same things again and again. I have to answer the same question about how was the process like, or how did the film came to happen, right? Come to happen. So is it ever tiring for you, being part of such conversations again and again, or do you just enjoy it? कि चलो अच्छा है, बोलने का
I
मौका मिल रहा
enjoy it, and also I give different answers many times. I think I am pretty okay with this idea of that. Many times truth is retrospective. So sometimes
है.
I discover new answers. For example, shooting with my mother, I have never talked about this whole emotional side of the process anywhere. But I've always said that this is what my mother said in the pitch video. So I thought it would be interesting to take her to the border. But the more, I think many times what answering the same question also allows you is to delve deeper into the process. So I
Hmm.
think many times you do that. Many times, I mean, I create my own fictions also. Like sometimes I'll honestly just invent an answer. I mean, it may not actually be factually true, but it will mostly be factually true. But I'll add a small fiction to it to make it exciting for myself. And so I do many things. Plus, I think I generally otherwise like talking about these processes. I think I'm very fond of both the films. I'm very fond of the times I spent making these films, the travels we were able to do. I'm fond of my team members. I love talking about them. I love talking about Anadi, Nupur, Omkar, Ashay. So in a way, these conversations allow me to express gratitude also, remind me that these are important people. So, but what you're saying is right. Uh, After a point, like now, if I go to a screening, I never sit in my film. I'll go to the screening as a, I would say, gesture to the organizers. I usually reach before the screening because I want to show that respect that, someone put in effort to organize a screening. I'll introduce myself or the film, and then I'll go out. I'll not sit in the film because I'm like, I can't live through this version of myself. I have changed. The Unreserved was made
Yes.
8 years ago. Borderlands was finished 4 years ago. I'm a different person. My reality has evolved, so I don't watch my films. In fact, last month in Bangalore, there was a screening, and I felt the room got locked after the show started. And I freaked out. I was with a friend, and he was like, What happened to you?" Then I'm like, "I can't watch this film. I can't watch this. I've watched this 60 times." And uh, so I think I now, after a point, you start seeing the film as outside you, like some version of me made that film. When I look at myself in those films, I'm like, okay, this is some version of me. This is no longer me. I have changed. And same with many times the conversation. So at least I try to answer it in a different way. It makes it fun for myself. I mean, these are complex emotions because you have put out something of yourself, and you also start seeing these characters' lives have changed. My mother's life has
Yes.
changed so much, but film में तो उतना ही है ना. So you start understanding कि ये एक time capsule है. This whole thing is a time capsule. It has more or less nothing to do with the present day life of me. मतलब it will contribute, of course, but practically my life has moved on. Everyone's life has moved on. And we're reflecting on something. ठीक है. मतलब I think all those
Are you
things.
are you are you still curious about these characters? Are you still in touch? I mean, of course, with your mother, but the rest five, do you still talk to them sometimes and ask them what they're up to and what they're not? Is it still the
So not
case?
so not everyone, because the film is in 5 languages, and to capture
Right.
some of these stories, I collaborated with someone who built the relationships, right? So, but I am in touch with my mother and Deepa. So Deepa
Right.
became more or less like a muh boli behan, and so if I go to Jodhpur, I meet her, and we talk on Instagram. We sometimes do video calls. So
Right.
Deepa के साथ मैं टच में हूँ. Rest all the people I don't speak their main language. Uh, but I have a feeling if I go to Imphal, I'll say hi to Surjokanta. Surjokanta attended a screening we did in Imphal, and he came as a chief guest in that screening. So some of these connections live on to different levels of intimacy. But I'm curious, of course. So I know that Noor has been repatriated. She's back in Bangladesh. Deepa,
Right.
be- Deepa first became uh, a volunteer for a mental health organization in her basti, and now she's a practicing nurse, which was one of her dreams. So she's practicing as a
Yes.
nurse in one of the bigger hospitals in Jodhpur. So to that extent, I know that people's lives have changed, right? Yeah.
And I also love the bit in the film, in the documentary, right? Of course, in the film as well, right? Where Deepa is enacting, and you two guys are also enacting this scene, and it was very beautiful. And that brings me to this idea, right? Because I have always had an idea watching documentaries from the Indian scene that the director never comes onto the screen. If you see the popular documentaries, if I have to name one, let's say Cities of Sleep, right? Shaunak would never come on the screen and be there talking to the person. You could still hear his voice somewhere, but with Borderlands, but with Unreserved, I have seen you right at times at the scene where you're talking to this yogi in the train, right? I could see you. I could see a glimpse of you. I could see your mic coming in the frame, right? And all of this experience is very raw, right? You feel like as this is how it really happens. There is no uh, filmmaking process that is concealed. You could actually see glimpses of the filmmaking happening while you watch the film itself, right? So was it a conscious idea, or was it just you are new to this and you just shot how you could and then it came across as this? Am I making sense of it?
Yes, yes, yes. You are, you are.
Yeah.
No, I think it's interesting because sometimes it helps to not know, right? So it's very interesting because I've shown both these films in film schools. Like I've shown them at FTI and SRFTI, and then people ask me about certain choices, which to me, I never made those choices. Those were very intuitive choices.
Do
And
you remember any such questions?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So for example, like you said, unreserved में mic दिखता है ना, so that, I mean, to someone who thinks a lot about each and every aspect of the process, it's a big decision that the mic is gonna come in the frame. And I think when, from the place that I came from, uh, it was more about just making sure that we need to record good quality audio without being intrusive, right? So I can't carry a boom and all because people will think something big is happening. If I am carrying this mic, it needs to be at a certain distance from the person's mouth in a moving train so that I get good quality audio. Now,
Right.
the moment I have thought like this, it is automatically gonna come in the frame because I can't keep the mic 1 feet away. The mic has to be here, and the frame will be such that mic आएगा ही. तो I don't think मैंने उतना सोचा, but I think with time you realize what comes naturally to you. So I feel, for example, बहुत सारी फिल्में जो आनंद पटवर्धन या संजय काक और इन सब ने बनाई है, sometimes they are more present. You can see the camera, you can see the crew. Uh, so I feel it's also about figuring what works for you. Some filmmakers are more comfortable making observational films. My films are more participatory. These are different approaches to making documentaries. Some people like voiceovers, तो हर किसी का अपना एक स्टाइल है. एंड धीरे धीरे तुम्हें अपना स्टाइल समझ में आता है कि आई लाइक इट व्हेन यू नो we don't pretend that we are not there, because like you said, if my process is so much about conversing and getting to know each other, it's obvious I am there. Then why to pretend I am not there? It's just I think something which just came naturally to me, that if we are there, if it's about my relationship with the characters, obviously I am present. Then what is the taboo around the camera crew or the film crew coming into the scene? And if Deepa, now in I love that Deepa scene, how it came out, it was again unplanned, which is why I can say I love it, because ऐसा नहीं है कि मुझे भी नहीं पता था वो वैसा बनेगा. ऐसा नहीं है कि मैंने ऐसे सोचा, मैंने वैसे सोचा तो हो गया. Deepa just suggested कि I want to show this to you, and if she has to role play that, we have to pretend to be the patients. It's not something we thought a lot about. It was just like Deepa had proposed something. I knew that this is interesting. I mean, because now lines are blurring. Like she will take some control. I knew that much. But after that, it's more about let's flow with the process. I didn't know how it will look, or or that she will end up. I have really liked. Usually whenever I've seen that film, people laugh when finally Deepa says कि ये बच्चा तो देखना पड़ेगा जिंदा है या नहीं है. And
हाँ, हाँ, हाँ.
it's everything is so out of control because I don't know what she's gonna ask, how Nupur is gonna react. Like I am really the supporting actor in that scene, right? Because it's mostly Nupur and Deepa. So so I don't think. I mean, one, I didn't know, and second, now I've become comfortable. Ki this is the process I'm comfortable with. It's more participatory. It's less observational. It's less pretending कि मैं नहीं हूँ वहाँ पे.
And moreover, your documentaries are about conversations. You have talked about it. But then I'm also curious, what is the lens that you view things with or from, right? Or what is the lens that you bring in when we see your documentaries? So one is that I would tell what I assessed of it. One is that I get to see uh, an everyday man, right? or ev- or an everyday human, how their lives look like when they travel in general tapas, or about these characters who are living across borders. And you have said this rightly so in a lot of ways, that these people are more or less nobody for the authority or for a lot of people, right? But then this is what you are focused on, this is what you are curious about. These everyday people become somebody to you in a lot of ways. So, is there any other lens that you also view your films from or make your films from, and which also comes in the process?
Right, right. No, I think it's interesting to understand that because a lot of it comes from your upbringing, and I think my upbringing was a little sheltered, and so it just is more interesting for me to document people who are not from the similar background. I think that is purely a thing which makes you more curious, right? Because you have not seen that way of life when you were growing up. It's been a certain kind of privileged, it's been a certain kind of sheltered. So you want to push yourself and just see how different people's lives are. And I think over time I have just developed a distaste for celebrities, and this more than celebrities, media's obsession with celebrities, and like this hero worship culture that we have for all celebrities. Because a lot of our cinema is about escape. One, we are
Hmm.
worshipping these images, and second, we are detached from reality. So I think by choosing to do these stories, it allows me to comment on both, right? Because we're talking about common people and we're also talking about real issues. I think
Hmm.
apart from that, the gaze, I try to keep a humanist gaze as much as possible. I have my own biases, ideologies, but I try and sort of root it in the emotional truth of a person's life, not necessarily their liking for a certain politician, or and there's a lot of aspects of every person. I feel every person has a dark side, every person has a light side. I think usually what I am interested in is that what are they doing to make their life better, even if the entirety of the social structure and the conditions make it difficult for them to live. Because my own motivation to make films is independence from a lot of these structures. uh, it's probably rooted in capitalism or gender, but I am also trying to escape a lot of ways in which these systems control me. How do people cope with them? I think I find it very fascinating to understand.
Hmm.
I'm definitely obsessed with borders and migration. And maybe it has to do with me coming from Punjab. Maybe it has something to do with me also being very fond of Bengal. I studied in Bengal, and I feel this solidarity between Punjab and Bengal around partition. And so, partition, borders, and South Asia diversity, these are things I really have grown to care about. I feel it has a lot to do with my own upbringing and experiences. But
Hmm.
over time, I've realized I just really care about. I mean, I find it very stupid that we had a colonizer. We fought the colonizer together. This is India, Pakistan, Bangladesh.
Hmm.
We were actually practically had the same enemy. We fought together, we drove them out, and then we became bigger enemies to each other.
Right.
Uh, we have something like the European Union. We know that Europe works because they cooperate. As a region, we are so backward. Uh,
Hmm.
why are we not coming together to form a South Asian Union? When a Punjabi Indian can freely talk to a Punjabi in Pakistan, right? When a Bengali in Bangladesh and a Bengali in West Bengal, they are culturally connected. Why are we not cooperating? So I find all those things very interesting actually. I mean, I am irritated, but after a point I'm like, this is such an interesting process that over the last 70, 75 years we've grown up to be such different people that an Indian Punjabi feels more connected to an Indian Bengali than than a Pakistani Punjabi or a Bangladeshi Bengali. So it's
Hmm.
crazy. I mean, obviously India has succeeded in creating a national identity. So I think those things have started becoming very interesting for me. So all these gazes, I mean, I try and not define it very well for myself, because the process also allows you to understand more and more what you care about. Yeah.
Right. What I could make of this is that you are also interested with the story of Borderland. You're also interested not just telling about these people or borders, but also about their personal identities, not about their geographical identities, but also how they associate with the geography they belong to, or they do not belong to, but are maybe in some ways captive to it, right? By
Yeah, yeah,
condition and situations, right? I
yeah,
see, I see. By the way, you were also teaching a course, right, at Symbiosis and at Sophia College. You were
yeah, yeah,
visiting faculty, right?
yeah,
Could you talk about that a bit? What were you teaching exactly? It was Introduction to Documentary Filmmaking, if I'm not
yeah, yeah,
mistaken. Yes, could you please take me through it, just a brief? What did the coursework look like, and what were you teaching? And did you enjoy teaching? The most
yeah,
important
yeah,
of all.
sure. So this is basically a course around introducing people to documentary filmmaking, like the course title says. but I feel it's also like an introduction to liberal arts, or introduction to Indian society. I mean, the films that I have chosen and the way it has all been curated is to also expose people to different aspects of life in South Asia. Of course, there are films from different parts of the world, but I think I make it a point to ultimately end up talking about religion, caste, and gender in the context of South Asia. That's how the films have been chosen, and that's how the course has been structured. So the films become an excuse to also talk about all these aspects in the classroom, and it's very interesting, especially in a college like Symbiosis, which is a private university, to talk about a lot of these issues which kids may not always get exposed to. So it's an interesting way to make people remember. So Ram Ke Naam is a part of the course. So people end up then getting exposed to what happened around Babri Masjid. India Untouched is a film I always show, which is, I think, one of the most comprehensive accounts of untouchability in India. And of course, it's also about exploring the form, the different ways of making documentaries. And then we get into the process. It's also a way of, I feel the best I can share, the most honest opinion I can share will come from my work. So I also discuss my films with the class, because I know the process, right? I can't hear
The
you. Yeah.
unreserved is also a part of it, right? Of the
Unreserved is a
course.
part of it. Borderlands is a part of it. Because I
Right.
mean, I can talk about interviewing in the context of I interview, and I always tell them that there'll be a subjectivity to what I teach. There's a subjectivity to all the documentaries. So I'm telling them what is my idea of documentary and where do I come from. So it's a course about watching documentaries first. Half of the course is that, because most of the times people have not seen good documentaries. The idea of documentaries is very restricted. And the second course is more about the practical sides of it. I am not so fond of the practical sides of it. I find it very off late. I've stopped doing practical workshops because I'm like, I'll do this 3-day workshop and people will make something very bad. I don't want to see something very bad, and I don't want to enable something very bad. 3 days is very less for anyone to really make something good. I am more
Right.
interested in helping people appreciate the diversity and styles of documentaries. वो मुझे ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग लगता है. So last year, me and Basundra, who runs this Instagram page called Gangs of Cinepur, we started a
Mhm.
documentary appreciation course, which is not just aimed at filmmakers, it's for cinephiles. We did it last year, we're going to do it this year later in the year, which is just about watching films and talking about it. We just watch uh, like 15 to 20 great films, and then we talk about it, we just reflect on it, and I feel that's very exciting to me, because I'm like, I don't want to pretend I am a guru who can teach you how to make films. You will learn it on your own. Everyone has their own journey. But I think I can be like a, I can help you. I can be a guide through the landscape of documentary films, so that your understanding of this medium increases. That's more like how I see it, right? It's like a
Right.
food walk. थोड़ा walk करेंगे, इधर थोड़ा खाएंगे, इधर थोड़ा खाएंगे, वैसा चलेगा. हाँ.
Even your bio on the site says it that you also curate food walks. I think it is a part of the story, right? Yes. Uh,
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I I have two more questions, and it is very rare for me that I have premeditated questions, that I come in with a set of questions I have to ask. But we had a time gap because you have to attend something, you have to attend to something, then you have to leave as well, right? So we just take two more questions, right? And I know about the time. The first question is: could you talk a bit about your upcoming project, the short fiction you were talking about, which you're making? What is it about, if you can, right? You said it will be out by February, and some more details on it. If the team is still the same, the people you have worked with in the past, and is the story inspired, or have you written it by yourself, and things around
right,
the
right.
same line.
Right. So some of the teammates are same, some are different. I think visually this is very different from whatever I've shot till now. Because it's fiction, there's so much more control. I was also looking for a gaze which comes from Punjab. So I'm working with a cinematographer from Punjab. His name is Sukhansar Singh, and Anadi is editing it. So a lot of new people also. I think after my documentaries, I was a little, I would say, bored, and I was afraid of being lazy. That I'll end up making the same kind of films again and again. So this film became a challenge to think about things differently. So So a lot of new people, some old people, and it's a film which I have co-written. I wrote the story came from me, but the script is co-written with a person. His name is Angad Bawa. Both of us. He was working on a feature film about a young Punjabi kid, and my story is about two young boys. You know, whose friendship becomes complicated due to conflict. So Angad was working on something I thought would be very interesting to collaborate with him because he's trying to understand the psyche of a Punjabi teen. So that's really what it is about. It's about friendship. It's about conflict. It's inspired by my own childhood. Uh, I was 9 years old when Kargil war happened, and while the ground for the war was not Punjab, we could feel the tension. And so this is what it is really about. This is how much I can share about it. But it's an interesting process for sure, very different because we have to think so much before shooting. Whereas in my documentaries, I have a lot of thinking has been, afterthought. uh, it's more about chasing a feeling. Here you know that because things need to be so planned sometimes that you will obviously think, you will have afterthoughts, but you need to also be very precise with a lot of planning. I'm working with some people I'm learning a lot from. It's a hybrid film, so I'm working with an animator. It's a film about kids, so I'm working with a child acting coach. Uh, and all of these are very interesting processes. We needed two protagonists, so we traveled around Punjab, met about 250 kids, 11-year-old 250 kids, and we trained them. Then after finding two people we really liked, we trained them to be our characters. And all of that was very fascinating, something I have never done with my non-fiction, of course, because these are real people. I Apart from my mother, I've never even commented on anyone's clothes when they came for an interview. I commented with my mother because she came like too decked up, and I was like, "This is not how you stay at home." So, so things are very different, Obviously, in this film, I am literally choosing each and every costume that my characters wear. So I have never had that much control. What should be the color of the wall? Because I can paint it. What will go well with the mood of my film. I have never made these choices, so this film is allowing me to do that. So it's interesting. Yeah.
About the choices, I was very curious when I saw the two documentaries, and I was investigating the idea how really a director helps in shaping a documentary, right? And how is it he just not a narrator or someone who's interviewing, right? Because he cannot make these spontaneous and impulsive choices of the everyday man. He cannot dictate those, right? All he could do is just sit with the camera and tell the cinematographer, right, that this is what we want to shot and this is what we have. And as you said, right now you are making choices about the costumes, the color of the wall, and things here and there. It gives you more control as a director and make you feel more like a director than documenting, right? Documentary. I do not know, maybe, right? Right. Okay. When you're talking about this short film of yours and about this Punjabi team, all I could think in my head was not all, but some part of me thought about Jaggi. Right? Have you seen the film?
I've seen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is the thing of which comes to my head from the recent rural Punjab and how Anmol Sidhu has captured it so well, right? I was shocked when I saw the film, but anyway, right. So I've asked this question to most of the guests I've had on the show, right? One was Parth Saurabh, who made this film Pokhar Ke Dunu Par, right? Then I had Vineet Gill, who's a writer. And initially, I was asking these questions out of compulsion because I thought I had to, but now I have become more invested in the idea. And the question is, does art solve any problem? Does art solve any real problem? And if it does, what is it?
Right, right. I think art at the core solves the problem for the maker. I think many times I say it from a very individualistic point of view first, that if I'm lost in my life and art becomes my meditation, I get a reason to thrive, right? And I think that's a big reason why a lot of artists make art, even if it is not the most materially satisfying. It's spiritually very fulfilling, and I think that itself, for me, serves the purpose of art because it at least gives me a reason to live happily. Second, I feel art does play a big role because you're trying to share a feeling with other people. I wouldn't say all art needs to speak to everyone. Every art has its own audience. But I think there's something very beautiful when I feel something and I'm able to pass that feeling to someone else. And cinema is very beautiful because you do that almost in a hypnotic way. Because if you see the way people engage with cinema, if they go to a theater, or if they're sitting in their homes and watching it on their TV, it's you have to be hypnotized to really like a film. You have to be invested in that world. You sort of lose a sense of time and space. There's a concept called cinematic time, right? Unreserved and Borderlands maybe 1 hour long, but when you see the film and you come out of it, the cinematic time that you've spent in that universe is many times different. You may feel like you spent a week while watching this film. Some films may feel like 5 minutes. So I think the idea of passing on that feeling, and it's something related to the idea of empathy. I feel seeing art, feeling things, it makes people more empathetic. So it serves some function. It's unfortunate that it cannot be measured many times. In social sector, many times you can measure change. Literacy itna बढ़ गया, female infanticide itna गिर गया, all of that, but you cannot measure empathy. But I think if we need empathy, art is very important, which is why music is very important, poetry is very important. These are intangible things, right? uh, and I mean, there's something very important that documentaries do, and a lot of fiction films inspired by real events do. They help us document, they help us remember, they help us create memories, which is why so many beautiful films about Holocaust, for example, Schindler's List, Life is Beautiful, The Pianist, these are iconic films because they also preserve memory. And because most of the people, they don't read history books. I mean, it's also unfortunate. It's often said that India gets its history from Bollywood and not history books, but that's also truth. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. So what is history in public memory? It gets dictated by art, so it's an important tool. And when I say this, it's almost like art is very important to propaganda. uh, and when I say this, I don't say it in a positive or negative way. Propaganda is of all types, and if I want to espouse my ideology, uh, if I feel cinema or art is the best way, I should use it. If I care about certain values, if I am a humanist, or if I'm a Marxist, or if I'm even a fascist, I think art is a very interesting way of engaging through emotions, but it's the language of emotions. But I think the vocabulary or the grammar is ideology, or whatever. I don't know if this makes sense, but there's ideology, and there is a like sort of a clothing or outer layer of emotions. So I think many reasons why art is important. You can't do away with art. It's also very human to express. The first thing we have as human history is not some text. It's paintings on a cave, right? It's Bhimbetka and some cave in France. We started creating art before we had a language, right? So I think in all those ways, I feel it's very important. I may not have a very scientific reason to it, but I think my intuitive sense is that our society will crumble without art. That's my feeling.
Right, right, right. Well, well, that leaves me with a lot of thought to think about it, and a lot of things to. Well, before going, if you could just recommend a few documentaries, especially from the Indian scene, that you think people should watch, right?
Right, right, right,
And
right.
if they haven't already,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. No, in fact, I am also going to suggest one or two documentaries which created tangible change, because like films do some, like I wouldn't always attach the reason for art to exist to change, but the thing is sometimes art does create change. So some
See,
Indian documentaries, I mean, Ram Ke Naam is like the Bhagavad Gita, Quran, Bible of Indian documentaries. I am sure if Patwardhan ever heard it, he would be like, I think he'll feel pukish. But this is the importance of Ram Ke Naam to the Indian documentary canon. Please watch it. Tungrus is great. I mean, a 10-minute documentary about a pet rooster in Bombay. It just tells you that documentaries don't need to be heavy. You can make it anywhere, and it still leaves you with some profound thoughts about human animal relationships. uh, I really like that. India Untouched, we talked about it briefly. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Just
great.
a point about Tungus, right? When I watched Tungus, I was laughing hysterically, right? I could not just control my thought, and then suddenly that moment comes when he lets the rooster
No
go, and
spoilers,
he
no
says,
spoilers.
no spoilers, right? And then, yeah, no spoilers. Please go and watch it for yourself. It's on YouTube, right? By Rishi Chandran. Yes,
Rishi
yes,
Chandra, yes, yes, yes. I mean, like you said, it makes you laugh. It makes you laugh, but it also exposes you to a certain reality. And I was talking to my partner that humor is important. I mean, and I think humor again is clothing to a lot of trauma. Varun Grover has done a very good stand-up recently about Punjabi trauma, which does this very nicely. India Untouched is a very important documentary about untouchability. I really like this film called Had Anhad by Shabnam Virmani, where she explores the different meanings of Kabir in India and Pakistan. She, in fact, travels to Pakistan and meets some people who love Kabir, some famous singers. It's a very interesting film. It's called Had Anhad. I love the title also. It has something to do with borders. And if I was to suggest one more, then I am really fond of All That Breathes by Shaunak Singh. I think it's very poetic. It's talking about an important story in a very poetic way. I think it's the pinnacle of Indian documentary form. It's so well conceived and well executed. There's so much to learn by watching it, and there's a lot of poetry to the story. So I think, and again, it's talking about human-animal relationships, and that is something very important in today's context. So all that breathes is definitely those top five. Yeah, yeah, and
right. This would
global
be
films. I feel there's a film called No Fire Zone. It's purely talking from a change point of view. It's about Sri Lankan government's wartime crimes against its own population, and it's freely available on YouTube. It's a very difficult film to watch actually, but that film made the United Nations set up a committee into Sri Lankan wartime crimes, which I thought was a great thing the film was unable to do. Yeah,
right, right. Okay, no fire zone. It's called
No Fire Zone. Yeah. Yeah.
no fire zone. Okay.